We've got a lot of our team up here today, and we're grateful for their work. And I want to thank you for joining us for this update on day 13 of the state of emergency in North Carolina. We have seen so many encouraging stories today. Volunteers, neighbors, and communities working together. Recovery is beginning in many places. But for some communities, today is still a matter of life and death. As of 4 p.m. today, 31 people have lost their lives as a result of the storm. We mourn for them and their families, and we don't want to lose any more. We are grateful for the first responders who have saved so many lives in the past week. More than 4,700 people have been saved, twice as many as in Matthew. But major flooding is still occurring across many of our rivers, the Lumber, the Cape Fear, the Neuse, and the Trent. For residents in Bladen, Craven, Cumberland, Greene, Robeson, Columbus, Wayne, Lenoir, Pender, Duplin, and Jones counties, please be alert and aware. As you know, many storm deaths occur after the storm has passed, especially when rivers overflow their banks or when people try to cross flooded roads or drive around barricades. Listen for evacuation orders. Leave if water is rising, and don't drive in floodwaters or around barricades. Today I went to Robeson and Cumberland counties to see the devastation there, and that's what it was. The flooding is like nothing we've ever seen. I visited with evacuees in Lumberton and Fayetteville shelters. They really want to go home. Some of them don't have homes, but they are glad to be safe. People in hard-hit communities do want to go back, and some are not sure if they do have a home to go back to, but many are still having to wait to find out. With portions of Interstate 40 and 95 still closed, and more than 740 road closures, I want to emphasize that travel remains dangerous in southeastern North Carolina. As North Carolina continues rescue and recovery efforts, do not drive in these flooded areas unless you absolutely have to. Right now, we have about 96,000 homes and businesses that remain without power. All of the utilities are working as hard as they can. Particularly want to salute the electrical line workers from across the state and around the country who have come to help. Thanks for their hard work. I've seen many of them out there. Hot meals are being served and volunteers are bringing in supplies, and roads are being cleared across our state. We're down to 24 school districts closed, though some of those aren't quite sure when they will reopen. Most universities and community colleges have started again, though a few will need significant repair. As of this afternoon, around 6,000 people remain in shelters, but people are slowly but surely returning to their homes in these areas where the rivers have already gone down and the waters have receded some. It's what they're finding there that worries them and us. They're finding flooded ground floors and ruined storefronts and destroyed churches. North Carolina's people, our towns, and our communities are still in shock from the devastating storm surge and epic river flooding and powerful winds. We hope no more lives are lost, but we do know the danger still exists. In North Carolina, I see it firsthand. We are getting our feet under us. We are setting things right. We will rebuild, but our partnerships with local communities and the federal government need to be stronger than ever. Yesterday, I was promised federal help and that it would come. and we intend to make sure that those in Washington keep their promise. I want to recognize a few people to give an update. First will be Mike Sprayberry.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. The State Emergency Operations Center remains activated at level 1 with all of our federal, state, private sector, and volunteer partners here at the State EOC. As expected, major riverine flooding in eastern North Carolina continues. We are currently experiencing major flooding at Cape Fear River in Fayetteville, Contentnia Creek in Hookerton, the Lumber River at Pembroke, Lumberton, and Fairbluff, Neuse River at Kinston, Neuse River at Goldsboro, Northeast Cape Fear River at Burgaw, Northeast Cape Fear River at Chinkapin, and Black River at Tomahawk. We urge everyone to use the North Carolina Emergency Management Flood Inundation Mapping and Alert Network, known as FIMAN, to ensure you are aware of potential flooding in your area by logging in to fiman.nc.gov at fiman.nc.gov. You can also sign up to be alerted by text or email when streams or rivers begin to rise near you. The State Emergency Response Team continues to be engaged in wide area search and rescue operations by both boat and air. Currently, Columbus and Pender counties are our most active areas of operation. A real special thanks to our aviators and boat crews for all the rescues that they've been doing. The logistics team's also aggressively pushing water, pumps, food, and other commodities. Sheltering continues to be a top priority for our displaced citizens, and we've now established 8 mass feeding kitchens in Wilmington, Jacksonville, Hope Mills, Kinston, Lumberton, New Bern, Washington, and Wallace. Thanks to our fantastic partners, the Baptist Men, American Red Cross, and the Salvation Army, for making it possible to have these hot meals. We're also actively engaged in detailed planning for the activation of a temporary shelter assistance program, and we also anticipate establishing disaster recovery centers very soon. As always, follow the instructions of your local officials and stay tuned to your local media to ensure situational awareness. Finally, a special thanks to all of the volunteers who make both the response and recovery possible. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you.
Mike, of course, is our Director of Emergency Management. Now the Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Transportation, Jim Trogdon.
Thank you, Governor. Jim Trogdon, Department of Transportation. Today we have interstates have experienced 16 areas that are flooding, and that is down over the last 48 hours from 19 areas, primarily I-40 and I-95, as you know. 32 U.S. routes, and that's down from 93 routes 48 hours ago, and 134 total primary roads in North Carolina, and that's down from 255. So we are seeing some light here at the end of the tunnel. We did get and receive today notification that we'll receive our first $14 million from U.S. DOT that will help us in responding quickly. Today, my focus was observing on the ground the damage in 2 primary locations, one in the Lumberton-Maxton area, the other in Fayetteville. Tomorrow, we'll be focused heavily on ensuring that we maintain good routes into New Hanover and Pender County. Today, we experienced the closure of 421 South at the Pender-New Hanover County line. And then, as previously briefed, the Neuse River flooding in Kinston will impact US 70 and 258, which we have been using. I'm concerned that we're seeing extensive congestion and tremendously stressing both local law enforcement, highway patrol, with people trying to return too quickly to our coastal counties, primarily in Onslow, New Hanover, and Pender counties, as well as some of Brunswick. So please, if power is not on in the area you want to return to, even if the road is not open, if there's no power, no water, no life support system, do not try to return too early. It just puts yourself in danger. The Cape Fear is still flooding and is not crested yet. It puts you in danger. It stresses our first responders and law enforcement, and it just puts an undue burden on our limited transportation system that we have right now. We did push an additional 14 crews into the southeastern counties, DOT crews into the southeastern and southern counties. Those are still focused on debris removal and road repair. We will be monitoring this situation closely, and we want to ensure we have good connections into New Hanover, Pender, and Brunswick County in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Trogdon. Now the Commander of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, Colonel Glenn McNeil.
Thank you, Governor. The State Highway Patrol continues to remain very active in the affected counties. We're committed to the safety of our local communities. Floodwaters in these areas are still rising, and the dangers associated with these roadway conditions remains fluid. While calls for service have decreased in some of these counties, others remain elevated due to response needs. Although specific routes are beginning to open to motorists, we continue to push out this message. Do not travel in the affected counties unless absolutely necessary. I want to thank our members of the State Highway Patrol who have responded from around the state to help those in need while leaving their own families behind. I also would like to thank the numerous local, state, and federal partners who have worked shoulder to shoulder with the Highway Patrol throughout this entire event. This has truly been a team effort. Please continue to monitor roadway conditions by visiting drivenc.gov. Do not rely solely on your navigational apps for travel routes. Again, I would stress roadway conditions remain fluid. Thank you, and please be safe.
Thank you, Colonel. Now our FEMA Coordinating Officer, Albie Lewis. Albie?
Thank you, Governor. Albie Lewis, Federal Coordinating Officer here in North Carolina. As Director Sprayberry said, we're leaning forward and working directly with the state on locating those disaster recovery centers where folks will be able to go in, find out about the programs, and check on the status once they've registered. We've also got disaster survivor assistance teams. 180 folks are out there already, going door to door and working through the shelters to register folks for assistance. Let me give you a couple key points for the registration. You can go to disasterassistance.gov. That's disasterassistance.gov, or you could call 1-800-621-FEMA. Again, that's 1-800-621-3362. TTY is also available at 1-800-462-7585. I'm very happy to tell you that already we have over 50,000 North Carolinians who have registered for assistance. I'm also happy to tell you that we have approved over $5 million for folks, with roughly $500,000 of that already distributed. Remember, you can call 211 for assistance and information, and monitor your local news for possible updates for any additional counties designated for federal assistance. Thank you.
Albie, we appreciate FEMA's coordination with us and your presence here in the emergency operations. We'll now have Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey to give us a briefing.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Mike Causey, North Carolina Commissioner of Insurance and State Fire Marshal. First of all, my condolences and heartfelt prayers go out to the families that have lost loved ones in the floodwaters and other accidents of this storm. I want to thank all of our first responders, and the various charities that are out helping people provide meals and helping victims. Today I was in Lenoir County, and as the governor said, the flood waters are still rising. We see people being evacuated, roads closed. We did have most major insurance companies that do business in North Carolina were set up at the Lowe's parking lot. I signed an agreement with Lowe's Home Improvement Stores that we can use any Lowe's parking lot in the state of North Carolina during this storm to set up victims assistance centers for the North Carolina Department of Insurance, where we can help people with insurance claims or get other types of assistance. We've coordinated with FEMA. FEMA was there with us today, coordinating with other charities. And one thing I've noticed in talking with people over the past couple of weeks, that very few people in North Carolina have flood insurance. Now, out of a population of 10.5 million people, I'm told by FEMA yesterday, we have less than 135,000 flood insurance policies in this state. That's going to be a problem when people go to file their homeowner's claim and find out that flood is not covered under ordinary homeowners policies. So we want to do a better job from the Department of Insurance in working with agents. I've had people come up to me and say, my insurance agent told me I didn't need flood insurance, or my insurance agent told me I couldn't buy flood insurance. So all of that is false. Anybody can buy flood insurance, and we want to do a better job of educating the public. And I tell people to go to our website, ncdoi.com, and you'll see all sorts of helpful information on what to do after the storm and in filing claims. But the floodwaters are still rising. We're still in a response mode in many counties, recovery in some other areas. If you don't have access to the computer, call our toll-free number, which is 855-408-1212. And we have people at the department that can help you with any type of insurance question or problem, and we're here to help. And thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're grateful for Monica McGee providing American Sign Language interpretation for us today. We have a lot of members of our team that are here. Questions for any of the team or for me?
Gary Robertson with AP Governor. I know the South Carolina's governor told its congressional delegation today it had a preliminary total of $1.2 billion in damage. Anything you can tell us about what you're looking at, whether you have any round numbers yet on the damage estimates?
The damage will be in the billions of dollars, and in North Carolina, damages continue to be incurred as floodwaters continue to rise. So we are keeping in close contact with members of our congressional delegation, with members of federal agencies. Secretary Trogdon and I talked to Transportation Secretary Chow today about $14 million in upfront money coming for highways. We know that the damage is significant, and we've received promises that we're going to have help. We're going to come forward with a responsible but certainly a hefty package of what it needs, what North Carolina needs. No question about that.
I wonder, can we clarify a little bit some of these rescue numbers? I saw something out of Pender County the other day where something like 1,000 people had been pulled out of the water by locals. When you say 4,000 and change rescues, is that including local numbers?
Those are what we know about. So, as rescues occur, sometimes they don't get registered into the system until a little bit later. So we would expect those numbers to go up because rescues are occurring now. Mike, you got anything to add to that? Yep.
So it's an incomplete number right now, but is meant to be inclusive
Yes.
of what local?
The locals add that up. They're very busy right now, and they may not download their information to the system, and that's why we've seen big jumps in the numbers, because they're letting us know what has happened.
If I could also ask, do we have any sense of whether it be because of missing persons reports or any other expectation of what we're gonna find when the waters go down in these homes? Or do we feel like people that needed to get out got out?
I think that there's still concern about people in homes. In fact, in some of these counties, when the flood waters went down a little bit, some people went back into their homes against the advice and against evacuation orders, and now some of those waters have gone back up again. So there are still counties that are checking on people in areas, and I know that the aerial searches are going on, and there's every attempt being made. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
So we still continue to do wellness checks. There's people that choose to shelter in place. We haven't heard of any significant numbers of people in homes where that was the kind of issue that you're talking about, but certainly wellness checks continue. Sometimes it's by boats. They'll go up to a house and there'll be people surrounded by water. They're still in their home, but they don't want to leave. So, and I would tell you something else about search and rescue numbers. It's a very difficult number sometimes to grasp. There's a lot of folks out there that don't report the numbers of people that they've rescued. They're just doing it as volunteers on their own. So in the end, it'll be a number that we got that's officially reported to us, but I think that leaves another number that where people never reported it, they just did it.
Once 40 and 95 especially reopen, what are the plans to manage the traffic, and what are you expecting as people try to...
Secretary Chogden.
Yes, it's typically what we see is once those facilities are open, it's almost a slower but just opposite of an evacuation. So we monitor all the routes the same as we would do during evacuation, and we would ensure that we are monitoring and making sure that we're addressing any of the bottlenecks where we can. And we partner closely. That's another function where we must partner closely with both the Highway Patrol and local law enforcement.
If I could ask about coal ash, we're having a real hard time kind of nailing down how impactful the one breach and the other pond overrun are going to be when it comes to this ash getting into the widespread environment.
I'll call on the Secretary of the Department of Environmental Quality, Michael Regan.
Thank you, Governor. We're taking a very close look at all of our coal ash ponds. I would say that there are two in particular that we're focused on. One is H.F. Lee in Goldsboro. We've had our Demler staff, or our dam safety staff, on the ground wading through that sort of chest level water to take a look at any kind of structural damage that may have occurred. I think what we've discovered is there is some minor damage, but there's so much water that inspection is incomplete. In terms of the amount of coal ash, we attempted to get staff on site. The water levels were too high, and so as that water level recedes, we will put staff on the ground to take a look at the amount of ash, if any, that may be escaping those ponds. In terms of the failure, the landfill slope failure at our Lake Sutton facility, we have done an aerial flyover. We've got pictures and we've taken a look at the structural imperfections there. We are working with Duke Energy to look at how to repair those failures. And then we're also, I believe it was today around noon, we had staff on site doing water analysis, again, to determine if and how much coal ash has reached that coolant pond.
Well, Secretary Trogdon can come up about I-40 and I-85. What should citizens that need to use those routes, I mean, what should be their expectation about when the all clear will occur? We've heard that, the rivers are still rising down near Wilmington. Could you address that?
Yes. So one of the expectations is while we're having these detours in place, especially the ones, where we're taking traffic that's more local on 995, sending them down 64, using other routes, using other interstate routes, anticipate your daily congestion will be worse than normal. The second is once those routes are open, we'll be able to manage the returns. It's much easier on the return than it is on the evacuation process because there's not quite as steep of a surge. But we will, when we open I-95 and 40, and I anticipate they'll be at different times because of the levels of water and when each of the rivers are cresting. We will make that public, and we'll let everyone know. I believe that will help relieve some of the pressures that you're seeing today on I-85 and I-40. Did that answer your question?
I'm sorry, I don't have my microphone, but should people expect to wait till early next week, or?
Well, if the Cape Fear is cresting this weekend, then it's not when it crests, when it goes back down. So it will be sometime after it gets down below those elevations. So I would anticipate right now on I-40, probably no earlier than the weekend following this one, that we'll see the water levels going down on I-40 and I-95, because the Lumber River in that location and the Cape Fear in another location, the Cape Fear has crested, the Lumber has not. So you can anticipate it may take 5, 6, 7 days after cresting, before these waters go down below the levels where we can reestablish transportation on these traffic on these facilities.
So you're saying, I'm sorry, so follow up, I-40 next weekend at the earliest, and I-95?
Anytime in that same general area or longer, depending on what these rivers do.
Thank you.
This may be more of a question for the Red Cross, but I've seen in a couple of shelters where they're asking for T-shirts, socks, things like that, and I don't know, is that localized or is that a widespread need at some of these shelters? Or maybe you could just tell people what they can take over to these shelters, if anything, at this point.
So requests for those types of items, we're working through our volunteer organizations active during disasters, as well as our private sector team, to make sure that whatever needs are that pop up at these shelters, that we can basically deliver them. And so Red Cross would be a part of that, but so would any other number of different types of agencies, volunteer agencies. So that's how we're taking care of it.
I did a conference call with the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce and the United States Chamber of Commerce today. Many businesses, a couple hundred, were on the line wanting to know what they could do, and we were providing them information. A lot of businesses are stepping up and helping. We're really grateful for that. Okay, we'll have another briefing at some point tomorrow. We'll let you know soon. Thank you.